A closer look at the new sanctions on Russia. They are hitting close to home for Vladimir Putin, with his daughters now targeted. Since the invasion began, the U.S. has sanctioned more than 140 oligarchs and family members, more than 400 Russian government officials. Terry Moran is in Lviv with the story. Good morning, Terry.
Good morning, George. In response to the mounting evidence of Russian atrocities in this war, the United States slapped new sanctions on major financial institutions, but they also went after, as you mentioned, Vladimir Putin's inner circle, his family members, because officials say they believe that's where he's hiding some of his money. This morning, the walls are closing in on those closest to Russian President Vladimir Putin after the U.S. and the EU announced a new round of sanctions, some aimed directly at Putin's adult daughters.
Together with our allies and our partners, we're going to keep raising the economic cost and ratchet up the pain for Putin.
Maria and Katerina, Putin's children with his ex-wife Lyudmila Skripneva, have remained out of the public eye for most of their lives. The U.S. Treasury described their alleged roles and how they're connected to the Kremlin. Maria, 36 years old, is the leader of a state-funded genetics research program that the Kremlin allegedly gives billions of dollars to. Vladimir Putin personally oversees it, according to the Treasury. And Katerina, 35, she's a tech executive whose work supports the Russian government and defense industry, the Treasury alleges. In a rare interview about his family, Putin discussed his daughters' careers in this 2017 docuseries with film director Oliver Stone.
Они не занимаются политикой, крупным бизнесом.
And they are not into.
Они занимаются наукой,
They are into science.
образованием.
Yeah, that's amazing. You're very lucky men. Two good children.
Я ими горжусь.
Yes, I'm proud of them.
Katerina is also known for her acrobatic rock and roll competition. Now the women are grown with children of their own.
Are you a good grandfather? Do you play with them in the garden?
Очень редко, к сожалению.
Very seldom.
Very seldom.
Very little is publicly known about Vladimir Putin's wealth, though independent investigators believe it is vast, several concluding that Putin is a billionaire. He lives like one. His opponents who hope to expose Russian corruption have released images of what is believed to be Putin's $1.4 billion home, known as Putin's Palace, and his $700 million yacht, registered under others' names. And that is why the U.S. is targeting those closest to Putin. A White House official saying they believe many of Putin's assets are hidden with family members. The U.S. and the EU are also taking new aim at the oligarchs who support Putin. On Monday, U.S. officials seized a $90 million yacht called Tango, owned by a Russian billionaire accused of having close ties to Putin. Over 600 companies have withdrawn their businesses from Russia so far, some, like Chanel, even refusing to sell products to Russians abroad unless they confirm they won't use those products in Russia.
Why do we have to respect Chanel House?
Enraged Russian influencers posted videos showing them cutting up their Chanel bags in protest. But for so many ordinary Russians, the effects of sanctions are devastating, especially to those who depend on Western business.
We expect hundreds of thousands of people to lose their jobs because of the sanctions and Western companies withdrawing from Russia.
U.S. officials say that the total package of sanctions on Russia now will put it out of the top 20 world economies and on a long path of economic decline and isolation, and it's ordinary people who are going to feel the brunt of it. The officials acknowledge they can't say whether or not these sanctions will really bite into Vladimir Putin's lifestyle, or even if they do, it would stop him in this war.
Yeah, whether it'll make any difference at all. Okay, Terry, thanks very much. Chief Legal Analyst Dan Abrams is here. Lots to talk about. Let's start with the yachts. What happens when they're taken?
Well, they're not necessarily taken. They're frozen, in effect. They're not owned by the U.S., for example, or a European country when they take that yacht. And there's going to be potentially long legal fights ahead. Typically what happens is when you freeze assets like that, you then have a fight over who's going to own it in the end. In the United States, you'd have to show there was a crime and that it was used in the context of that crime in order for the United States to then literally take that asset. But one other interesting question is, who pays for the upkeep right now? In theory, it should be the oligarchs. But what? They're going to be sending in money to pay for the crew? So the bottom line is you're going to see that asset also depreciate in value over time, which is, something else to think about.
But can the oligarch, can they use shell companies to get around these sanctions like we've seen them do before?
They're trying to do it all the time. They're trying to put it into trust. One of the reasons that they're going after Vladimir Putin's daughters is because a lot of the time they give money to family members to try to hide it. So that is absolutely something that's happening and something that the U.S. is well aware of.
And what about U.S. companies abiding to these
restrictions. I mean, how strict is that?
It's very strict, and there are both civil and even potentially criminal penalties for U.S. companies or individuals who violate sanctions. Now, remember, this can be tricky, particularly for a small or medium-sized business. First of all, there can be a Russian-owned company could be done through an intermediary, or it could be unclear exactly who owns what in connection with it. And the bigger and trickier thing can be, let's say an American company is doing business with a South American business, South American individual, and they have reason to know that that person will then resell it to Russia. That U.S. individual or company could be held responsible under the sanctions if they had a reason to know that that would eventually end up in Russia.
7 weeks into the war, why not sanction Putin's daughters right at the start?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that they were holding on to it as a sort of carrot and stick. They wanted to use it later on if they really wanted to go after Putin personally. But I don't know how much money they also have in Western Europe and the United States.
Okay. Dan Abrams, thanks very much.
All right. Thank you, Dan.
Well, hey there, GMA fans. Robin Roberts here. Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Lots of great stuff here. So go on, click the subscribe button right over here to get more of awesome videos and content from GMA every day, anytime. We thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the morning on GMA.